Hi guys, this is Mike from Crosstown Exotics. Today, myself and my partner Colin are going to be doing a virtual presentation for you guys with our lineup of reptiles, bugs, and amphibians. Hope you guys enjoy. Alright guys, the first animal we're going to see is a Madagascar hissing cockroach, specifically a wide-horned hissing cockroach. And here is our beautiful little guy right here. They come from Madagascar, which is kind of like a island off the coast of Africa, and they're a kind of like a drier forested type animal. You find them on like the forest floor, and living in dead logs, maybe a dead tree stump. Just under structures like that is where they spend most of their time. And as far as how big these guys get, wide-horned hissing cockroaches, they're one of the largest roaches in the world. They average roughly like 3.5 to 4 inches, I mean almost the size of my palm, and they're pretty heavy-bodied also. And I guess I get a good comparison, like your German cockroaches, like the ones you might find in like a dirty restaurant or like a motel or something, they're like an inch or so. So that's kind of like, this is Godzilla of roaches compared to what most people are seeing. And on average, I want to say a lot of roaches, you know, you're probably looking at an average of 1 inch to 2 to 2.5 inches, because some of your other species can get, you know, fairly decent size. And lifespan, these guys live anywhere from 2.5 to 3.5 years, so not super long. And that's kind of like typical with a lot of roaches. Like German roaches, I want to say, I think they're roughly like 1.5 to 2 years. Some of your roaches, like the American roach that you find in older factories and stuff, they live almost 2 years. And they take a while to even get big enough to, you know, to reproduce. So they have to have a good long, decent lifespan just to grow. Like roaches don't just get big one day overnight. They have to, you know, just like us, they have to take some time to grow. And as far as what roaches eat, it's a very big variety of things. So in nature, this particular species is going to eat, you know, rotting vegetation, like dead wood, maybe the occasional dead animal, fruits that fall on the forest floor. At home, I give them a variety of dark leafy greens. I give them fruits once in a while, like apples, maybe some banana slices. And then they also really like sweet potatoes, and then I have some pelleted foods that I give them as well. And as far as diet goes, like a roach's diet is very important because they eat like things that are decaying or stuff that we might consider are garbage. So they're important in that aspect because of what they eat. So next we're going to kind of go over some unique like adaptations that help insects, and in this roach in particular, kind of like, you know, navigate life and survive out in the wild. And one of them is, you guys probably see them, are his antennae. They're constantly moving around, constantly touching things. They're very sensitive to smell, basically. It's kind of like his version of a nose. They don't have a nose like us, but they use these antennae to help smell and sense things in the environment. You know, he might put his antenna on something and be like, oh, this is a delicious banana, or oh, that's not food, I'm going to move on and go somewhere else. And all insects have antennae, and they're a sensory organ. They help kind of navigate the environment because not all insects have very good vision. So that kind of supplements them in a way that they can, you know, better live one more day, just like everyone else wants to do. And some other cool things with these roaches is on their feet, they have these little hooks that help them to hold on to like bark, you know, the side of structures and things. Like at home, in the container they're in, they can climb up the glass or the plastic in whatever they're being housed in. And last thing we're going to go over, well, I guess another thing we can look at too here is their legs. We went over the hooks on their feet. They also have these interesting little spikes. So if the roach is scared and you go to grab it from the top, they kind of stiffen their legs out, and it makes them hard to grab because those little spikes, they don't feel good. With him crawling on me, you don't feel him. He's got to be scared to kind of stiffen up and utilize those projections on his legs. But last thing is they're called a hissing cockroach because they can make a hissing noise. All along the side of his body here, kind of going down his abdomen, he's got little holes, and when he gets scared, he pushes air out of them, and it's like a tss, tss, and it's supposed to frighten off potential predators. you know, like if you were picked up a slice of pizza and it screamed at you, you'd probably put it back down. And that's kind of like where the roach is coming from. You know, a lot of animals, they grab it, don't expect them to make any kind of noise, and they're like, whoa, and then drop him, and then hopefully he can run away before he gets eaten by a potential predator. Next bug we're going to see here, guys, is a Vinegaroon. And these guys come from the southwest United States, and you find them more in desert type environments, drier climate, and they actually spend most of their time underground. You know, they kind of make a burrow or find a dark, secluded place, and basically during the hot time of the year, they're underground in a hideout, and in the spring and kind of more, you know, wet, humid season, they'll come out and search around for food. So an average size for these guys is anywhere from, I don't know, I'd say like 3 to maybe 4.5 inches on a monster. This is pretty average right here, the individual we're looking at in my hand. And lifespan-wise, they for an invert, they have a pretty long lifespan. I mean, these guys can live 10 to 12 years. So, I mean, they live a long time. And as far as what these guys eat in nature, it's just a lot of smaller bugs, whether that's crickets, roaches, worms, smaller Vinegaroons, anything that they can catch and overpower is what they're going to eat. And the way they eat that is with these projections on the front here. So those big arms, they help to grab onto his food, and it would grab like a cricket, and then basically he's got mandibles up here, and he would start munching away. So some neat adaptations that this animal has to survive in nature. The first one you're probably going to see is it looks like it has antennae. They're actually modified legs. So his legs are kind of special where instead of having an antenna like an insect to smell, he uses his feet to smell the environment. Kind of lets him know if there's food around, other Vinegaroons, just kind of an extra sensory organ, which is pretty neat because they have very bad vision. A lot of arachnids, you know, like spiders, scorpions, their vision's not the best. And another really cool thing is this projection that is coming out of his butt right here. So another name that Vinegaroons go by is whiptail scorpion. And they're not a scorpion like most of you guys are thinking. They're a cousin, but they use that little whip projection there to, they make acetic acid, which is like vinegar. And what they'll do is if something's bothering them, like let's say some kind of small mammals coming up, poking at him, he produces that acetic acid on his tail, and he throws little droplets, and it gets on the animal, and it smells bad. I mean, it could sting their eyes a little bit, but it's just to kind of smell bad, and that's going to scare away other animals from trying to eat them. All right, guys, next animal here, this is Trevor the toad. He is a smooth-sided toad, and they are native to South America. They come from a rainforest type of environment, and most of this toad's life is spent on the ground, on the forest floor, in the leaf litter, you know, hiding under logs and things like that. They like kind of more of a humid, cool environment that is basically you find on the forest floor. As far as diet, what these guys eat mostly is just, I mean, anything they can fit in their mouth. Small inverts, you like your earthworms, roaches, crickets, grasshoppers, basically any kind of little critter that's going to walk in front of him, he's going to view as something to eat. In captivity, we do a lot of superworms, crickets, they like dubia roaches, and some of these guys do get to the size where they may be able to eat like a small lizard or a small rodent. So, as you guys might hear while we're holding Trevor here, he's kind of making some chirping sounds. One reason we know Trevor's a boy is because only boy amphibians make that noise, or make chirping sounds in general. They use that to kind of find, to impress the girls. Like, hey, I'm over here, listen to my awesome chirp. So that's kind of how we know he's a boy. Another cool thing with toads is that toads have these big glands on the back of their head right here behind his eyes. They're called parotoid glands, and what they do is they house a poison in there. So if you were to try to eat this toad, like you would take a bite out of him, just that poison would get in your mouth and make you really, really sick, and you would probably never eat a toad again, or you'd spit them out right away. And that's kind of how toads protect themselves. Kind of a cool adaptation, because other than that, other than jumping away, I mean, he can jump pretty quick, but not super fast, so that poison gives him an extra little bit of protection when he's out there hopping around on the forest floor looking for food. Guys, next animal here is jelly bean, and jelly bean is an African giant bullfrog. They also go by pixie frogs, another name that people call them. And these are one of the largest frogs in the world. He's a pretty big boy. They come from Africa, specifically like South Africa, and they live in more of an arid desert type environment. So I mean kind of dry most of the year where they're from. And as far as what this guy eats, I mean, obviously he's not missing many meals, but they will eat anything they can fit in their mouth. So in nature, they're going to eat small mammals, maybe a small bird, other pixie frogs. As babies, they're eating mostly insects. And also another weird thing, too, is they'll eat each other as babies because they're in a spot where there's not a lot of food, but there is. So they just capitalize on whatever is in front of them. At home, we give jelly bean rodents. He likes cocktail shrimps. He's also eaten squid, cuttlefish, and like pieces of chicken as well. So he's not very picky when it comes to what he eats. Things that help jelly bean survive in the environment where he's from. One of them, you guys see how he's big and fat like this. That's not just from him eating a lot. What they do is they hold fat in their body. Kind of like how a bear gets fat before they hibernate. And what he'll do is when the drought comes, there's not a lot of rain, he digs a hole and he'll kind of wait underground and make a mucus cocoon, which is like a snot cocoon, and it helps to hold in all the water, and then he lives off the fat while he's taking a long nap. And they can stay out of water, I mean, it's several months at a time when they have their droughts. So I mean, for like almost half the year probably, he's just sleeping in a mucus cocoon, living off his chub. And that's kind of one of the biggest adaptation he has for surviving in the kind of like the harsh environment he has. And another cool thing that helps him to kind of get food is he has there's like some projections in his mouth that help him hold on to things when he bites them. Because obviously he's not going to chase anything down. He sits and waits, and something walks in front of him, and he just goes, brah. And having those projections in his mouth helps to hold on to that food so it doesn't get away. And believe it or not, for a frog, he's got a pretty strong bite. Another cool thing is that between boys and girls, we know Jelly Bean's a boy because he has orange armpits. So if you guys see his belly here, looks like he's got orange coloring here. And females don't have that. Females have a solid, kind of white stomach, and males also get, double the size of females. A female would literally is only like this big compared to how big he is right now. So kind of some neat little facts and adaptations that he's got to help him survive in the harsh environment where he comes from. Our next animal here is Rocco, and he is an alligator snapping turtle. These guys come from the southwest United States, or southeast United States, should say, I'm sorry, and kind of go up into the very southern tip of Illinois. Where they like to spend most of their time, where they're commonly found, are swamp-like environments where it's very slow-moving, almost stagnant water, shallow creeks, shallow rivers. They don't like areas of just fast-moving water in general. They like that swampy, lots of logs, rocks, things that help them blend into their environment. So as far as the size of these turtles, they're actually one of the largest freshwater turtles in the world. They can get a couple 100 pounds. So you're thinking 250 pounds or so, with some specimens saying they've been more, but I think it's kind of all over the board with some of the uniquely large animals. These guys also can get up to a 3-foot shell. I want to say it's 30 to 35 inches on some of your big monster turtles. And that's typically males that get larger. Females, I want to say, are about 60 pounds and maybe have a 2-foot shell. They're not quite as large. And we aren't 100% what Rocco is, but we'll love him either way. As far as if he's a boy or a girl. If he's a boy, we're hoping that because he'll get huge. And then lifespan, online you'll read a lot of places that say maybe 70 to 100 years, but some of these guys I think can live much longer than that. As far as diet goes with these turtles, they are omnivorous, so they will eat a combination of plant and animal material. So in their babies, they're eating mostly things like small fish, freshwater bugs, like crawdads and freshwater clams, things of that nature. But as they get older, they eat vegetation as well. One of their favorite things that they've found that these turtles like are acorns. Some of the alligator snappers, when they harvest them, some guys trying to use them for soup or something unfortunate like that, some of the scientists will ask, hey, can we look at the gut contents? And they'll be filled with acorns. So I guess acorns are a delicacy to these turtles. At home, Rocco gets a varied diet of like freshwater fish. So I give him like trout, catfish. I mean, he's not very picky with that. He'll get chicken sometimes, but he also likes to eat yellow squash and watermelon on occasion, and zucchini. So some unique adaptations that this turtle has is, we talked about earlier that they like to live in a, you know, slow-moving, kind of like swamp-like environment where they can blend in. So when you look at Rocco, he kind of looks like he might be a log or a rock. He's got all kinds of things hanging off his neck, and they like to blend in, look like part of the environment. And if you look on the inside of his mouth, it looks like there is a little worm there. And when he does, he sits really still, he wiggles that, and fish see it, and they're like, oh my gosh, look, that's something delicious to eat. And they go to try to take a nibble, and then chomp, and that's kind of like a super unique way for him to catch his food, is that he's got a built-in fish lure on his mouth. You know, built-in fish lure, super camouflaged, and these guys can stand underwater for prolonged periods of time. I don't have exact minutes on it, but I mean, they can stay underwater a lot longer than we can, sitting super still, just waiting for food to come to them. And when they do breathe, they usually only like to stick the tip of their nose out of the water so that they're not really seen moving around.
This next animal we're going to see is Rufio, and Rufio is a red-foot tortoise. Red-foot tortoises are found in South America. They're like a medium-sized species of tortoise. They're known to get around 25 pounds, which is kind of on the larger end for this guy, but they can get quite large. Redfoot tortoises have a mixture of different habitats throughout South America. They can live in the jungles or the rainforests, or they can be found in like the grassland areas. So, that being said, these animals do have a wide variety of things that they like to eat. They'll eat things like fallen fruits, leafy greens, grasses, different fruits and vegetables. But they're also known to eat things like carrion. And simply carrion is like roadkill, just animals that have perished in the wild. And they'll kind of take advantage of a little bit of a free meal. So they have been known to eat dead animals. Redfoots will also eat insects like worms, bugs, and things like that. So again, they do require a bit of protein in their diets to make them happy. Redfoot tortoises actually use this black and spotted coloration on their shells to blend in to the shadows underneath the plants and vegetation in which they live, which is quite interesting because you would think an animal that's kind of all black or brown would kind of stick out a little bit because it is one big solid color, but actually those spots and things do break up their pattern enough to where they ultimately disappear into the wild. Now, the reason why they're called redfoot tortoises is because they've got that beautiful red coloration on their legs. And honestly, I couldn't find anything in my research on why they actually have that beautiful adaptation. But regardless, I mean, they're such a stunning species. When it comes to owning these animals as pets, I would recommend, if you are looking for a bit of a larger species of tortoise, not anything that gets as large as maybe African spurred-thighed tortoise, or maybe even a leopard tortoise. Redfoot tortoises are a fairly decent species. They do require a bit of humidity and a nice variety of diet, but I would recommend these animals as maybe a first-time tortoise for anyone that's interested in owning one. Tortoise's lifespan is anywhere between 50 to 100 years. The oldest living tortoise in the world is 187 years old. So it's always important when you're getting a tortoise to realize that you may have this animal longer than you really think. So it's always good to have a backup plan to where if you don't want to keep this animal anymore, or say this animal may outlive you, to accommodate for this animal once you've passed on. Now, the difference between turtles and tortoises is that turtles like to spend their lives a little bit more in the water. Some of them go back and forth between the water and land. Tortoises primarily spend their lives on land. Now this one, you could tell, is more of a versatile species because it's got this ovular shell, okay? Most tortoise species you find in the desert have a circular shell. Now the reason they have this ovular shell is because this animal needs to be able to get over stumps and logs and things, and being circular, they're much wider and they'll get stuck on roots and branches and whatnot. Being an oval, that makes them much easier to kind of make their way through their environments, being in like the clustered forest floors. The next animal we're going to cover is actually the closest living relatives to turtles and tortoises, which is crocodilian. Crocodilian are divided up into a few different types of individuals, which would be the alligators, actual crocodiles, caiman, and gharial. Now, Chubbs is an American alligator. This animal can reach up to around 14 to 15 feet long and weigh close to over 1,000 pounds. This animal lives in the southeastern United States, and there's only two types of alligator in the world, the Chinese alligator and the American alligator. Alligators live in the Everglades and swampy lakes and streams and whatnot. This dark brown coloration helps them blend into the murky waters in which they live. Now, alligators have a couple cool adaptations. One, they've got a nictitating membrane which allows them to submerge their eyes underwater, and then that membrane flicks across their eye and it allows them to see underwater. Alligators also have little nerve endings along their jawline, and that allows them to feel any vibration that hits the water, so that if an animal were to enter the water or be moving, they can use those nerve endings to help pinpoint them in some murky locations. Alligators will regenerate their teeth throughout their life, and they have a jaw strength of over 1,000 pounds per square inch. Alligators also have armored plating along their back, which is called an osteoderm. And previously I said that this is the closest living relatives to turtles and tortoises, and this is that link. Osteoderms are a mixture of keratin and bone that are used to protect the interior of this animal. So if it's ever in a battle with another alligator over territory, or maybe a female, or if a potential predator when it's younger tries to attack this animal and maybe eat it, that osteoderm plating along its back allows them to kind of take some pretty death-blowing hits and be able to survive. Now, because these animals are aquatic, they do have webbed toes along their back feet. They do have slight webbing on their front legs, more so on their back, and then they do have this flattened tail to help them propel themselves through the water. Alligators are legal to own here in Illinois. These animals are a permit required and license required animal through the state DNR. So if you are thinking of getting one, don't. These animals, again, just from the list of things I've already stated, are not good pets, because they are, one, a fully aquatic creature which requires a lot of filtration, a lot of space. They can reach up to around 15, 16 feet long and several hundred pounds. And then also, two, they can deliver a very serious bite. And obviously, first and foremost, they are legal. So again, these animals are to be handled by professionals, and the only reason why we are able to obtain this creature is, one, we do have our license, but we're using these animals for educational purposes. The state DNR does want people to experience these creatures and be able to hold and touch these animals, but with some heavy restrictions. So we're lucky enough to have this animal with us, and we're glad we get to use him for educational shows. So our next animal is Bilbo, and Bilbo is a northern blue-tongued skink. Blue-tongued skinks come from a variation of different places, mainly between Indonesia and Australia. This northern blue-tongued skink actually comes from Australia. It's a true Australian species. Northern blue-tongued skinks are the largest of the blue-tongued skink family. They do reach up to around 2 feet long, which is fairly large for a skink, seeing that some of the other skinks in their genus only reach up to around 12 to 18 inches. Blue-tongued skinks are a grassland species, so that's why they're very low to the ground. Their legs basically sit close to their sides, and that allows them to kind of just slide through the grass, these sandy areas. I've had a friend that actually lives in Australia, and she says that blue-tongued skinks are just as common as our rabbits here in the United States, which is actually pretty cool. I mean, compared to us not seeing many lizards around, having these animals all over in your garden and things like that, I think I'd enjoy living in Australia. Blue-tongued skinks are an omnivorous creature, which means that they do like to eat all things. They love eating snails. They've got very strong jowls to break the hard exterior shells of a snail, but they will eat things, again, like berries, grasses. In captivity, I love feeding them sweet potatoes, squash, They love their berries. It's just good to get a great variety in their diets. I'll also feed them like a pelleted food from Missouri, which is like a herbivore diet, and I'll feed them a little bit of an insectivore diet as well. They do love eating insects, so any insects you can find to give them, superworms, mealworms when they're younger, crickets, even dubia roaches. All of those type of insects are great for their diet and great to vary it up. And then on occasion I will feed them scrambled eggs. They'll eat, chicken part. You can give them ground beef. Really anything you can do to vary up this animal's diet, the better care you're going to provide for this animal. Now, this animal gets its name from its blue tongue, okay? They use that blue tongue to scare off predators because in the natural world, blue is not that common of a color, so it does indicate that it could potentially be poisonous. So these animals will stick that bright blue tongue out and let any potential predators know that they could be deadly and it's not worth you trying to eat them. And lastly, what makes skinks such an extraordinary different species than most lizards is that these animals actually have live young. Now, in the reptile world, reptiles typically lay eggs, and so these creatures will carry their babies in like a little egg sac. So it's a transparent, softer egg sac, and they will carry them to full term, which is pretty crazy. Now there are other different species of animals that will do, or reptiles that will do that, such as boas and some native snakes here to the United States, even as local as Illinois, like your garter snakes and brown snakes, even your northern water snakes here in Illinois, will carry their young to full term, which is pretty neat.
All right, guys, this next animal here, this is Gamora, and she is a green anaconda. They are from South America, and you can find them in several countries throughout like the Amazon rainforest area in the Orinoco Basin. They like to live in swamp-like habitats, marshes, slow-moving rivers, and more like tropical rainforest type environment. Most of their time is actually spent in the water. As far as size goes on a green anaconda, they can get between 20 and 30 feet long. They can weigh over 600 pounds on occasion and get up to 12 inches in diameter. So that's a snake, I mean, you're looking very, very wide and girthy animal. And in nature, you're probably thinking they were probably looking at a 10 to 15 year lifespan, where in captivity, they can range from 20 to 30 years for an average lifespan if taken care of properly. And as far as what these guys eat, wide variety of different animals. When they're younger, they're going to do small birds, rodents, but as they get bigger, they're going to move on to larger animals like turtles, capybara, which are like a giant river rat, small pigs, small deer, and I don't know if I said caiman already, but caiman, which are like a small crocodile. And believe it or not, jaguars. They come to get a drink of water, and an anaconda will pull them right in. So it's kind of like an apex predator. There's not a whole lot that is going to eat a full-grown anaconda, but it eats everything it wants. So in addition to having a massive size and weight, they have some other cool adaptations that allow them to live in their environment. So these guys, being mostly aquatic, actually have their eyes more on the top of their head. Their eyes and nose are kind of basically on the top, so they can just sit in the water with just their nose and eyes out, waiting in ambush for something to walk up and leaving their body with minimal exposure. Another cool fact we have about the green anaconda is that when they're born, they come out live, they're almost 2 feet long, and they already have the ability to swim and hunt. So they are ready to go as soon as they are born, basically. Alright guys, this last animal here, this is Allie. She is a Burmese python, and these guys come from Southeast Asia in kind of like rainforest type environments. They like it hot and humid. They do climb up trees and stuff on occasion, but most of their life they're terrestrial snakes, so they're spending their time on the forest floor, kind of just cruising around looking for food or hiding out from the extreme heat where they're at. Alright, as far as size goes on these animals, on average, a Burmese python can get between 15 and 25 feet long. They can live 20 to 30 years, and average weight in captivity, you're looking at between 100 to 200 pounds. But the largest Burmese python on record was from a place called Serpent Safari out in Gurney Mill, Illinois, and it was about 400 pounds, which is 200 pounds bigger than the average, so a massive, massive animal. And as far as diet goes with these animals, when they're small, they're going to eat things like small rodents, small birds, but as they get bigger, they're going to move to small deer, migratory birds. I mean, almost anything they can fit in their mouth, they're going to try to take it. And since snakes, they don't have arms or legs, the way they catch their food is they're going to grab it like by biting it and then constrict it by putting coils of their body around it and just kind of basically suffocate the animal until they're able to start swallowing it. And in order to take down large prey items, snakes have a very flexible jaw, and the front of their jaw is actually split, like right here on their chin. So they can take in large prey items that are almost double the size of their girth. We'd like to give a special thanks to our local libraries for hosting us today, and we look forward to seeing you guys in person at one of our future presentations.
Have you joined up for the Summer Learning Challenge? Sign up today for Dig Deeper, Read, Investigate, and Discover. The challenge is going on now through July 25th. You can sign up online at www.newlennoxlibrary.org/summer.